and we can move on to the last topic of the day that I really wanted to get into with you, Gavin, which involves Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. This says Ron DeSantis fires roughly a dozen staffers in a campaign shakeup. The Florida governor has struggled to break into Trump's lead, and his campaign has been burning through money. Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign has fired roughly a dozen staffers, and more dismissals are expected in the coming weeks as he shakes up his big money political operations after less than 2 months on the campaign trail. A source familiar with the firings described those who were let go as mid-level staffers across several departments whose departures were related to cutting costs. The exits come after the departures of David Abrams and Tucker Obenshain, veterans of DeSantis' political orbit, which were first reported by Politico. Sources involved with the DeSantis campaign say there is an internal assessment among some that it hired too many staffers too early, and that despite having brought in $20 million during its first 6 weeks, it was becoming clear that costs need to be brought down. Okay, so one, if you compare that to like $4 million that RFK has raised, that is pretty hilarious because it is true that he's getting a lot of corporate cash, just not nearly as much as Trump. Some in DeSantis' political orbit lay the early blame at the feet of the campaign manager, Janera Peck, who also led DeSantis' 2022 midterm election bid and is in the hot seat right now. They say a source familiar with the campaign thought process said they should never have brought so many people on. The burn rate was way too high. People warned the campaign manager, but she wanted to hear none of it. So these are people making excuses now. DeSantis' stock isn't rising. 20% is not what people signed up for. So that means that the big money is just going to start buying their favors from Trump now, and it's going to continue with the implosion of Ron DeSantis. We've been saying for a while that DeSantis had next to no chance at, unseating Donald Trump because he had no rabid base. He had no cult following. All the people who were crazy for DeSantis were crazier about Donald Trump, right? They want the Don, not the Ron, and they've been explicit about it across the board. So, again, just absolutely crazy to pretend that Ron DeSantis is getting all the corporate attention and the corporate fawning when if you just Google Ron DeSantis and look at the news tabs, it's all about how he's not fundraising enough right now. So clearly they're not that concerned. We know how they treat candidates when they're extremely concerned about them, right? They treat them like Bernie Sanders, right? And they promote them like Hillary, and they will shove them down the public's throat. Anything be damned. If they wanted to do that to Donald Trump, they would fucking make it so that he can't run in the primary because of his ongoing legal battles. And everybody who wanted him out of there would just sign off on it. And that's what they would do to somebody like Bernie Sanders. But because they know Donald Trump is an insider and because they know Donald Trump can win them an election, they're willing to play ball with him. Okay. They are not casting him to the side. Okay. It's pretty ridiculous that Jimmy tried to compare it to the assassination of JFK. Okay. This is not a serious person.
Yeah, DeSantis is in deep shit, guys. This is real bad for Team DeSantis. The problem with DeSantis is that he peaked way too soon, and now he's flaming out way too early. And honestly,
Warren supernova.
Yeah, very similar to Elizabeth Warren, actually, although he seems to be flaming out even earlier than
she got to the October before.
Yeah, exactly. She was actually pretty formidable, like well into the primary season. Well, it really does look like DeSantis is flaming out before things have really even kicked off, before even the first debate, which has hilariously led some donors to start looking at Tim Scott instead.
Imagine people thinking that Tim Scott was the better fucking option than you, with all of the media coverage that Ron DeSantis has had for so long. People, you know what happens if you say the name Tim Scott? People picture the guy from Home Improvement. Like, they're just like, I don't know who that is. I don't fucking know who that guy is. And that's not a slight at Tim Scott. I don't know literally anything about him. Except for the fact that, he's the senator from South Carolina. That's not Lindsey Graham.
Yep. And, to be honest, I do think that Tim Scott is a much more likable person than Ron DeSantis. If we totally put the politics aside, I think that Ron DeSantis comes off like a dick. I think that Tim Scott comes off like a much nicer person, a much more warm and gentle person. I'm not sure if that's what Republicans are looking for or if that's what they want. But personally, I would much rather Tim Scott be the Republican nominee or the president for that matter than Ron DeSantis. Obviously, that's an incredibly low bar. The bar's literally in hell. But still, I do think Tim Scott's more talented and more personable politician than Ron DeSantis. Not that that means he'll have a shot in hell at beating Donald Trump. But yeah, DeSantis is fucked, guys. DeSantis is absolutely fucked. In my opinion, the only thing that DeSantis has that could possibly save his campaign now is Donald Trump either dying or going to prison, straight up going to prison. That might not even save him. But at this point, it's all he has left to bet on. I really do think that is the case. And not only is that all he has to count on to save his presidential campaign, but his reputation more broadly, I think, is really in jeopardy here with the Republican base. He's completely humiliated himself in this attempt to run for president, completely squandering his celebrity within the Republican base. You guys might remember a year or two ago, literally a year ago, Ron DeSantis was widely loved and widely celebrated within the Trump MAGA Republican base. Again, people that love Donald Trump really, really liked Ron DeSantis. They kind of did view him as next in line, as the heir apparent. A lot of people had a lot of kind things to say about DeSantis who were in Trump world. But now, because of the fact that DeSantis has decided to challenge Trump, and because of the fact that you can't challenge Trump without vocally criticizing Trump, DeSantis has been out here shitting all over Donald Trump, calling him out, criticizing him, bringing up things that he did wrong. And what is that doing? It's pissing off the base, who ultimately just care about Donald Trump more so than anything. They're really just a cult of personality around Donald Trump at this point. They don't even really give a fuck about building the wall or any of the things that Donald Trump originally ran on. They're not even really that concerned about that stuff anymore. At this point, the Republican movement, at least the base, is really just a cult of personality around Donald Trump. He is their God king. He is their dear leader. And the ultimate sin that you can commit as a Republican is criticizing him, is turning on him. And that's exactly what DeSantis has done here, thinking naively that he could capitalize on the fact that he was this rising star who was widely celebrated, thinking that he could somehow supplant Donald Trump as the leader of that cult. Clearly, he was gravely mistaken. His campaign has gone off like a fucking wet firework, to be honest, starting with that miserable, embarrassing launch on Twitter Spaces that Zach and I covered. That was hilarious. And that seems to have basically set the tone for his campaign so far. It has been no more exciting and no more dynamic than that initial Twitter Spaces launch was. And it really does seem like he's only going to go down from here. I don't see what could turn this around. It's definitely not going to be a debate, because we've seen how poor this guy is when he's responding to his critics in tense, off-the-cuff situations, like in press conferences. We know he doesn't like to take hard questions. We know he's not the most personable person. He doesn't have really great people skills. So yeah, I don't know a way out for him now. I don't see how he can right the ship at all. And honestly, if I was DeSantis, I would be a little bit pissed off at my wife, because apparently his wife essentially convinced him to run. He was kind of hesitant about it, but his wife, Casey DeSantis, is like his right-hand woman. She's his number one political operative, basically the only political operative that he trusts. And apparently she told him, now is your chance. You got to run for president in this election cycle, or you are going to squander your popularity and your rising star. He took her advice, and I think it was terrible, terrible fucking advice. He should have stayed back, let Trump win the nomination uncontested, and just continue to be on the sidelines, soaking up love and attention as the governor of Florida. But I think this was a terrible, terrible decision for him to try to run against Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think this right here illustrates exactly what his next move is. He's about to try and do the Chris Christie, bro. He's about to try and do the Chris motherfucking Christie, the Ted Cruz maneuver. He's gonna go kiss the ring like an obedient lapdog, and he's gonna try and win Donald Trump over, and he's gonna do him a bunch of fucking favors now, and he's gonna try and get to the point where Donald Trump doesn't absolutely try and destroy his political career, and that's why he went on CNN for his first non-Fox News interview. And what does he use the time doing? He attacks the Department of Justice for going after his opponent in a Republican primary. That is unthinkable. It is unthinkable. The only person that could ever fuck up that bad is Bernie Sanders when he said he didn't want to talk about the emails on national television. You know, when your opponent is in hot water, that's when you pounce. That's when you fucking strike again. Except for he knows it's over already, right? And he's trying to do damage control, right? So before he ends his campaign and he goes and kisses the boot or whatever the fuck he's gonna have to do, right now he's saying, "Oh gosh, I'm doing damage control." He's on CNN right now, repeating the former president's claim that the Justice Department is being weaponized, though notably trying to distance himself from Trump over his January 6th conduct. DeSantis just told host Jake Tapper, this country is going down the road of criminalizing political differences, and I think that's wrong. Alvin Bragg stretched the statute to be able to try and target Donald Trump. Most people, even people on the left, acknowledge if that wasn't Trump, that case would not have likely been brought against a normal civilian. And I would like to add that Al Capone's tax evasion case wasn't probably going to get brought up on a normal civilian and end you up in Alcatraz. But when you have lemons, you make lemonade. Okay, I'm sorry that once in their fucking lives, the justice system's actually working for rich people. As president, my job is to restore a single standard of justice, to end weaponization of these agencies. We're going to have a new FBI director on day one. We're going to have big changes at the Department of Justice. Americans across the political spectrum need to have confidence, yada, 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 yada. He's kissing Trump's ass, okay? And he's, more importantly, he's buying into every piece of Donald Trump's framework. And I guarantee you, he's going to just go out there, talk about how crazy it is. Oh, gosh, even me as his opponent, even I can't stand for this, right? Because he knows he's trying to play a counterbalance to Trump, where Trump feels like what he's doing now is kind of useful to him because he's not a threat anymore. And he's out here basically just making the case for Donald Trump to be president again. And I think that's how Ron DeSantis tries to reel back in the absolute fuck up, as you pointed out, of running for president, because you're totally right. For a long time, we were like, when is this guy's going to announce? When is he going to announce? People are like, why didn't he announce the night that he, won the governorship? Even I was like, that was his highest moment. That was his biggest time to shine, right? It would have been way better to announce it then than it was on Twitter Spaces, which was, mocked by everyone that heard it, that wasn't being paid to celebrate it or kiss somebody's ass. So anyway, not good. DeSantis is not going to be the next president, and he's not going to be the Republican nominee.